Hello everybody! Today I want to dive into a list of things that I discovered I wish I had known back when I first awakened or started my healing journey that would have saved me some time or would have at least helped me navigate this insane, intense journey. I got lost in each and every one of these along the way. Either I, was under the facade of them or I just didn't know about them. And this so often happens where you get to the right information right when you need to know it. If you were led to this video, I can only assume that something I'm going to say is going to set off a light bulb of something that you just previously didn't know. So let's jump right in. First concept that I was unaware of was spiritual bypassing. I learned about it very, very quickly though, which saved me a lot of suffering. But essentially this is when you use spirituality as a painkiller or as a way to get away from reality, to not accept your reality. You can find this in, any religion, any belief structure, any law of attraction type of thinking where you can only be in one area, one fantasy land, and it causes you to not experience your full amount of humanness and can kind of get you stuck in just this little bubble, this bubble where everything is nice and happy, and I cherry pick the teachings that just make me feel good. Spirituality, at least for me personally, is a lot about discovering truth, and spiritual bypassing is kind of the opposite. You can see this a lot in people who are constantly chasing higher levels of consciousness. And if you kind of pull away a lot of that, it can be this need to escape pain. So if your tool or teaching is allowing you to escape pain to the point where you're actually not in reality and acceptance of what is, then that could be called spiritual bypassing. Second is to test the teachings that you follow. There's so much information out there. There's so many YouTubers, Instagrammers, books, teachings. I mean, there's so much. And something that I always felt was I just felt really confused by, who to believe, what to believe in. If you are following somebody, my question is, with their teachings, do they value self-love and autonomy and respect to everybody and love to everybody? Or is it about, us versus them, or higher vibration versus low vibration, or something that would cause a separation? When you are going to follow a teaching, see if you can find people who've been following that ahead of you. How are they? How are their lives? Has it helped them truly and set them free and allowed them to go towards a healing journey? Or have you noticed that it's kind of capped that? Number 3 is you do not need to show your spirituality to anybody or, shout it out from the rooftops. It can be a private and sacred thing, and you can have that sense of keeping it to yourself if you wish. You can also get out of the spiritual closet and begin to tell people, as long as what you're saying isn't kind of imposing on anybody's boundaries, which especially with spiritual stuff, if you're getting intuitions, if you're getting lots of downloads, you can accidentally kind of give people too much information. You're not really supposed to influence someone's journey unless they come to you or ask. And so my golden rule of thumb now, because before I was just like, if I felt like somebody kind of had an inkling of the possibility of understanding me, especially in those first 2 years where it was so tender, I would kind of lay it all out and then just be like, why did I do that? Because obviously the person wasn't able to kind of understand it because it was so abstract and I didn't even understand it. And so I really urge you to honor it and not have to communicate it just because you're going through it, but to really make sure that the people you're discussing it with are safe and get it and really get it. And it's okay to do either or. And along those lines, something that I wish I knew was that it's more important to understand where other people are at as opposed to having people understand me. In the beginning, I just was so upset, like no one would understand me and get it, and no one would get it. But I wasn't really checking into how often I got other people and understood where they were coming from, spiritual or not. And so I was asking something so high and so big of people when I wasn't willing to do it for them. I wish I had known more about behaviors that are found in spiritual communities. I wish I had understood, that sometimes no matter what the teaching is, we can get kind of caught up in group mentality. And now I understand how important it is to constantly center myself and what's true for me so that I don't get roped in. And I'm even in groups that you believe in everything they're saying and you love everybody, it's still important not to get sucked into that herd mentality and go along with the rules and just the culture and the way things are if it doesn't feel right for you. Unfortunately, in a lot of communities like this, they attract people who are more vulnerable, who are looking to heal, who kind of have their hearts open and not protected. And so in those dynamics, especially when you have a lot of people who are trying to heal, it can be painful because people are projecting their shit. You have an open heart and it's hitting you more so than it ever would because you've kind of entered that space believing that you were going to be safe. And so it is important to go in with boundaries. And so you just want to be on the lookout that you're constantly protecting and taking care of yourself, no matter what community you're in. Next one is that spiritual growth is often accompanied by a shit ton of physical symptoms. And because I didn't fully believe that, I oscillated constantly between believing that it was spiritual and then doubting myself. So I'm going to say it to you right now. When the body is awakening, when the body is going through intense amounts of evolution, it is a biological process as well as a consciousness up-leveling, right? Like your body is going along with you, and so much of our subconscious is stored in the body. So when you think of awakening being material from the unconscious becoming conscious, you can't rule out the body because the things that were stored are coming up, coming to the light and getting transmuted and integrated. And so you can experience tons of pains and physical sensations, sensory perceptions, like what I call the Spider-Man senses. It can feel very up here, and so we tend to forget that this needs to catch up. Your body's always going to move towards health and move towards that awakening with you. It's just, I wish I had known how much my body would react to an awakening. My next is discernment. I would pretty much, once I believed that everything happens for a reason and I would look into synchronicities, I believed that everybody who came along my path and every teaching and any words I heard were for me. The problem with that is that you don't have your listening boundary, which is when you take in information and kind of cross-reference whether it's true or not and trusting your own intuition. What happens is you just take it all in. Like anybody who crossed my path, I was meant to love and accept or understand, or they had something for me, every teaching. And what happens is then you just become like the Pac-Man. You're taking everything in. But what happens a lot of the times in our journey is that it's not about taking it all in. You will get lessons in discernment. So the people that were coming to me where I believed I was supposed to take them all in, it was actually the universe teaching me that that was a moment for me to go, my gut does not align with the words that this person is saying, and I have to discern that this isn't for me. So for years, I had lessons of discernment cloaked in what I thought were just synchronicities. When it comes to discernment, this isn't a judgment. This is never about saying somebody is worse or better, or you're more evolved, you're less evolved. Absolutely not. It just means when the energies don't align, you have to respect that their teachings and their lessons are taking them down different adversities and different challenges that won't necessarily align with yours. And so if I were to cling to somebody else where the energy was off, I would just be kind of following a different energetic trajectory. Not worse, not better, just different. So when discernment is there, it's allowing us to kind of split off from those paths that really aren't meant for us. And when you meet people or teachings or whatever comes your way, and you get that sense of resonance and there's just this right feeling about it, that's when you know it's your path. My next one is that it's okay to be angry. I thought that anger, was poison and it was terrible. And if you were angry or triggered, it made you less spiritual. And the thing about anger is if your anger violates other people's boundaries, that's how you know you need to contain it. But there is nothing wrong with expressing and speaking up and using anger as an energy to get your needs met or set a boundary. It's really hard for women, especially because we tend to feel like anger is something that we're not supposed to embody, and it makes us feel like we're really going to lose connection because nobody likes angry people. But what can happen is when anger is bottled up, it can be so toxic to your internal body, it can cause all sorts of disarray. And just to know that your anger, your feelings of like, that's not okay, that's okay. My next point is to be in integrity. This is hard for me because I've always felt like I wanted to be a person with integrity, and yet a lot of my behaviors and actions haven't aligned to that. So it's not about guilt or punishment or anything like that, because I do not believe that we live in a universe that punishes. But I wish I had aligned with integrity sooner and continued that as a compass, not as a self-punishing tool, which a lot of people can use it for, but just to go, do my words and actions align with what I really believe to be true? I really feel like I've gotten to a place where I could say I'm a person of integrity, but just kind of make sure that what you're spitting out spiritually or the things that you're believing, that you're putting those into words and actions in your life and letting them align. And that also aligns with kind of gravitating, for me, such a great quality of integrity is to try and be as honest as possible. In the past, I feel like I have used honesty as a way of accidentally hurting other people. But I believe that with love, trying to align to authenticity and speaking in a genuine sense. Like, I'm not going to get on here and be on this camera and on this YouTube channel and be a totally different person to who I really am. We can see this with the guru complex of them embodying one side in front of people to such an extent they didn't allow their humanness and their true authenticity to be shown in front of other people and to kind of lay that out on a platter. So then the shadow takes over in other ways, which we could see in abuse of power and engaging in things that were the exact opposite of being a person of integrity. And that pattern has repeated in a lot of spiritual groups and a lot of people that proclaimed to be of integrity. So you just want to make sure that only you're watching yourself. You just want to align to your heart. Next point is that most things end up in a paradox. I'm a very mental person. I like to analyze, but when you go far and deep into the roots and the origins of most anything, you'll find that it's that Alice in Wonderland, or I think it's Wizard of Oz actually. They're like, I don't know which way you want to go. That you end up in a land where both things are always true. Both things are always true. And so for me, my sense of having a little stability in that is to always seek the middle ground, because I know that you can debate until the sun comes up both sides of the argument at all times. And even things that I've had a stand on and a part of me believes and I pick a side, if I really entered a debate with someone, I would also end in that, like, yeah, both things are true. And so it's important to have stability in that, because everything can just end up in, in that energy of like, oh my God, what is life? You get so meta. And instead of following everything and becoming meta, I like to have at least a grip on something, but to accept that, most things can be true. My next point is I wish I had known that I would cry almost every day of the past 4 years. And if I didn't cry for a week, it would be released in a gigantic sea of tears. There is much more to be felt. I'm speaking right now to past Laura. Girl, there is so much more to be felt than you thought there was. There was so much more collectively, so many more pieces, and every year in, you're going to believe, wait, like, is there more? Like, does that mean there's something wrong with me that I'm still finding pieces? Just like in the earlier point, everything is everything. So you're going to find everything in this body. You're going to find every pain, because we're not free until all of us are free. So if you're very open-hearted and you're going through this awakening, you will feel all of the pain. And I accept my responsibility of a transmuter. Like, I will feel it, the pain. If I had a choice, like if I could push a red button and say, should you feel this or nothing at all? I would still feel, because I feel like it's kind of been, it's been my duty to be somebody who is able to show up to those emotions. And if it's in my body, it's in everybody's body. And so I'll do my piece of the work. I'll clean my part of the garden. And this doesn't mean that you're too emotional. It means you are alive. Like Glennon Doyle says, I cry more and I laugh more because I'm paying attention. Along those lines, my next point is that sensitivity is your superpower. You don't need to grow out of it or adapt to a culture that promotes this extroverted, more defended personality. Stay in that sensitivity, because oh my God, you're going to be so happy that you did later on. My next point is, I heard a lot about, your tribe coming, or, you grow out of people, and I feel like I was premature to that. Like, if I felt like some sort of like disconnect, I'd be like, oh, this person's meant to leave my life right now. Like, whether that was a family member or like, things that you might want to stick around for more. And so I feel like those teachings sometimes in the more immature sense can be used to give yourself the excuse of, just letting things go that you should be showing up to. Space is always okay, but sometimes you shouldn't just disconnect. And with the tribe, I also believe that I would have like this party bus of people show up that were all aligned with me. And now what I know that I wish I knew is that the people that will come, it will be slow, but it will be so rich and supportive. And they're not people who think exactly like you, but they are people of the heart. And that is all that matters. And that is all I want in my life. And similarly, because I felt shame about maybe using those detachment tools a little too prematurely, I went the opposite way as the pendulum swings. I then believed that you shouldn't really detach from anybody and you should just always show up, and that just isn't true. People will absolutely grow out of your life, and you may feel those pangs of codependence or what will they say or whatever it is that's keeping you clinging to that. You have to let the universe bring people and take people that will support the next phase that you're moving into. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the other person. It just isn't clicking anymore. It just isn't vibing. It just isn't making you feel good in your body. And that is time to let it flow out of your life. The next point is, you aren't more lonely now, more detached, more separate, more on your own. You were always lonely, deeply lonely, surrounded by people in this fake aesthetic, and that wasn't better. You were always lonely, and now you're aware of it, and now you have the chance of really giving your inner child the support it needs from this new platform. So there's no regression, there's no more isolation than your inner child already had in her body. My next point is boundaries, 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 boundaries. Every time I learn about boundaries, I'm like, yes, and I gain something else, and my life changes, and then I forget about it, and then the next big hurdle, when the word comes back and gets introduced, I'm like, oh shit, this is about boundaries as well. Oh crap, this is about boundaries. I feel like boundaries is the gift that keeps on giving. Just when you feel like you've forgotten about them, they come right back, and you're like, oh, I forgot that I needed these. So I will continuously forget throughout this journey how important boundaries are, how they're not just in your friendships or professionally, or they're in your romantic relationships too. They're with your family, they're with everybody, absolutely everybody. Just keep learning about them, keep implementing them, and yeah, they're going to be one of the biggest recurrences in your healing journey. Get a guide. I wish I had started therapy or had my mentor come into my life sooner. I felt like because I watched the videos online, I could just do it all on my own. And I have a video where I'm talking about healing in isolation and the challenges of that. And I oscillate. So I was super independent, and then I got the guide and I took off. Like, so much started to make sense and I was really coming into my wholeness. And then you go through periods of like, oh, now it's time for me. Like, you can maintain those guides, but now it's time for me to really learn about self-regulation again and meeting my own needs. And so you can oscillate between the two, but it's so helpful to have that support that's been there or that knows about emotions and all of those kinds of things, to have that. My next point is progress is sometimes invisible. Sometimes you are not in reality. You are not able to see all of the concrete steps that you've taken, how far up that staircase you have gone, because you're constantly in this little bubble of what the new trauma or challenge is. You can't really see beneath you. You can kind of see how far you still have to go, but you're not really stopping and getting all of the evidence. And sometimes that requires someone to reflect back to you like, whoa, I need to remind you how much you're doing and how fast you're doing it, because we can forget, and you'll always forget how much progress you're doing. So my advice is to really check in with people or journal or be able to have something that you can come back to. Let it be messy. It's never going to be in neat, pretty boxes. It's never going to be something that you can perfectly graph, perfectly put into a plan, a schedule. Everybody's coming up with a model, and it's important to have models and structure. I believe in them fully, but we can't really model everything or structure everything about this journey. It is messy. It is backwards and forwards and sideways and going back to the same point 30 times and then only needing to do this one little piece of work and you shot out of that. I mean, it is Alice in Wonderland once again. And if you know that, if you can get comfortable in the mess, it will really help. My last point is that I can trust myself. I wish I had known sooner how the sensations in my body are my red flags. The sensations in my body are telling me what isn't right, what isn't conducive to health, who should or shouldn't be here. Every time I have doubted those sensations, I have put them up as trauma or triggers. And while yes, you will experience a lot of triggers that might feel confusing, when the water settles, if you still have that longing for something else, if you still feel like something is toxic and isn't right for you, if you still feel that gnawing feeling persistently there, you must at some point trust that feeling. There's no coincidence. We came into this body with well-equipped compasses, and that is our heart, our gut, any other sensations in your body, paying attention, because this will be the only toolbox that you need. You will gather millions of tools. You'll have notebooks stacked of spiritual tools and healing tools and psychological tools, and you'll get lost in all of it. But every time you do, and you center back into this body, this is the only tool that you need, and you can trust in it. And sometimes you'll need enough experiences of your reality matching what your gut was telling you, and it matches and you're like, I was right. Oh my God, I was right. And then that's a little notch on your belt. And then next time it happens. And that is sometimes what needs to happen in order for you to begin trusting yourself. But I'm just here to say that I wish I had known I could trust myself sooner. And that's my video, guys. I hope you enjoyed all of the things I wish I had known. I hope you have a beautiful day. Mwah.